Okay, thanks for joining the Mike on Mike program again. If you're watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe to the channel. That helps move things along. If you're watching on Facebook, go to the Mike on Mike page. There should be a link there near this video, and like and follow that page. That also helps out if you enjoy the content. Okay, I'm joined today by Julie Thomas and Jeromy Ford. Jeremy's U-Turn for Christ, yep. And you are Path. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. So tell me a little bit about yourself and what is Path?
So I'm the president of PATH, and PATH stands for Partners Assisting the Homeless, and it's actually a grassroots volunteer advocacy and working group. About 2 years ago, several citizens all got together and said, wow, what we're doing to impact homelessness and mental illness and addiction is not working, and we're under the constraints of the original injunction. And then Measure 110 passed, and all of a sudden the drugs were decriminalized, and our community was hammered in the worst way. It's very obvious to everybody. So we got together and said, we can do better, but what does it look like? I had no idea. And that those conversations culminated into an actually quite large volunteer group. And our number one goal is to identify who's doing what are the services being provided, what are the sustainable solutions that are being impactful in our community, and how can we support those who are making the greatest impact? How can we support them to be successful in doing that? So we've met with virtually all of the local nonprofits that are working in the arena, work specifically with those who are making the greatest impact, and then leverage those resources. PATH can provide donations, we can provide volunteers, we can backfill whatever they need. Let's say there's homeless families and the one organization they're working with finally got them all housed and they have nothing but the clothes on their back. PATH will come in and do whatever it takes to get those families back on their feet, whether it's beds for the kids, kitchen appliances, whatever it is. So we're really fluid because we're grassroots and because we're all volunteer. We're not a 501c3. We take no money. We don't ask for money except for business cards, which is really helpful. Our mission actually is to collaborate with our community partners to find sustainable solutions to help people transition from homelessness to a self-sufficient future in Josephine County. So we've seen great impacts in spite of our challenges, and we're back in under another injunction, so I feel like we've stepped 2 steps back. But the cool thing is that now, for the first time in many years, a lot of the people who are working in their own silos, trying to do it all on their own, they're working more collaboratively. They're working better together. And by working better together, there's less duplication, there's greater impact being made, better sustainable solutions. But we knew, because the problem was continuing to grow, that we need to do something even more, even better. And that's where Jeromy and U-Turn for Christ comes in. And we jumped on board immediately because we know that it's right now in our community. This is the way that's going to fill that remaining gap to make homelessness what we say. Homelessness, we want to make it rare, we want to make it brief, and we want to make it non-recurring, not manage it, but eradicate it. So I'm super excited to be here with Jeromy to talk about that.
So let me ask you, you said that you don't take any money. How are you sustaining this?
Self-sustaining. So sometimes we pull money out of our pockets if we want to buy. We'll work with U-Turn or Gospel Rescue Mission to find used furniture for families. Or we had a lot of kids that were sleeping in their cars with their families, and they were starting school in September, and the parents were doing everything they could just to get clothes on them ready for school. So we just purchased a bunch of backpacks, and we worked with our foster kids, and we went and packed all the backpacks full of all the supplies they need. So it's really all either out of pocket or just volunteer or steering. As an advocacy, we see something that's really great for our community, and that organization needs to be advocated for. Just last year, we had $800,000 come to our community. Nobody was standing there ready to take it, so it was going to go back. We said, no. On Track steps up and said, we need emergency beds. We have people that want to go into treatment. We've got a 3-month waiting list. If we can build emergency beds, we can get people help right now while they're waiting. They just opened those a week ago.
So the $800,000, where'd that come from?
It came from the state. And I don't know if it was ARPA funds or Measure 110 funds, but yeah, it came from the state.
I see.
Yeah.
And so, Jeromy Ford, you're U-Turn for Christ. What are you guys doing?
So U-Turn for Christ is it's a drug and alcohol restoration ministry. We've been around for about 30 years. We originally started with one in California. And since then we've blossomed out to around 30 around the United States and around the world, with Philippines, Thailand, Mexico, Kenya, across the United States. What we do is we work on biblical restoration from drugs and alcohol. And so we've been dealing with this type of issue, like with the majority of the homeless issue, you can tell it's mental health and it's addiction, and those kind of go hand in hand. And after going, with our church, we have a homeless outreach, and we were going to the encampments on J Street, and in the middle of the night, I got woken up, and it was just with that thought in my head that you got to do something about this. Because you see a lot of it, and it's been labeled as a homeless industrial complex, and I kind of agree with that term, because there is certain there's a certain amount of money that gets thrown at homelessness, and it's become a business. It seems like a business complex to keep
right.
That it's not kind of coming from the angle that this is solvable. It's been coming from the angle that let's
sustain it. Yeah.
Let's sustain it. And I started looking at different models. Started searching the web. Hey, what's working? What's not working? What are other communities doing? We came across what was called the Built for Zero initiative. It's a model that they're using around the world. It's a great model. It's actually been working in other towns and other communities, but that model is kind of a housing first model. And one of the things that we were seeing on the back end of that is a lot of people were falling back into homelessness because they're not really dealing with the root issue of addiction and mental health
So
issues.
when you say housing first, that essentially means you just take whoever comes into you and you just drop them in some place to live, and you go, we're done.
Right.
Yeah.
And so although it was working although it does work in some instances, but it doesn't work all the way around. And
and I would submit the unfortunate homeless are happy to have a place to live. Absolutely. And they're functional enough to sort of make that work. But if you put a non-functional drug addict in the same place, different result. Yeah,
with no accountability and no measures that kind of come out of that. And so we've been looking, Julie, myself, and other people that are part of this, looking at different things at work, and we're going to come at this from it's going to be a low barrier, but it's going to be low barrier to entry, which means there's not going to be any restrictions for you to be able to come in. But once you are in, you need to develop a path out.
Okay, so here, let's drill down on this a little bit, because the community has become very, very familiar with what low barrier really means.
Right.
And then you had situations like the J Street and the 7th Street camp, which are basically no barrier at all.
Yeah.
So when you say low barrier to entry, what does that mean?
So what that means is we're not going to exclude anybody from being able to come in and reach services, but once you do get in, you need to determine a path out. Like whether if you have mental health issues, we'll get you a mental health evaluation, medical evaluation. If you're a veteran, we're going to get you linked up with veteran services. If you need addiction treatment, we're going to get you addiction treatment, whether that's ADAPT options, whether it's U-Turn for Christ, Gospel Rescue Mission. We're going to be able to provide all paths out. So it's going to be a level of accountability, and I think the big difference from this.
So no drug use on site.
No, and there's going to be once the property does go through. We talked with the chief of police, and we've been working with the mayor's office and city council. There's going to be a 5,000-foot exclusion zone around the property. If you're urinating, defecating, doing drugs, you're going to go to jail on a behavior. Not because you're homeless, you're going to go to jail because your behavior is bad and out of line.
Well, I would wonder why you need a 5,000-foot exclusion zone for that. I mean, if you're 5 miles from there taking a dump somewhere, why isn't that a problem?
Well, I think because one of the properties that we're looking at is going to be right in the middle, possibly a residential area, and so we don't want anything that's going to interfere with the neighbors, and for the neighbors to go raise their eyebrows at. So
policing that's not going to be an easy job.
Right, and that's one of the things is what we have in the community is encampments right now, and this isn't going to be an encampment. This is going to be a 24/7 managed site with security cameras, staff, case management there 24/7. Curfew. Yeah, you got to be in at a certain time. There's going to be a morning check-in where you need to check in. You need to be working with case managers. You need to be working your way out of
So these are barriers in my book, but I guess low barrier has a legit definition. Do you know what that is? What the difference between that and what you're doing?
So one of the gaps that we found working in this space for the last couple of years is that we now have, before we didn't have any low barrier at all. We had Gospel Rescue Mission, we had treatment beds, we had U-Turn for Christ. Those are relatively high barrier with very high regulations. What ends up happening is you have somebody at the lowest level that needs to get through those barriers before they're even stable enough to do anything like that. So Mint opened up, as you know, in the last couple of years, and they are able to take anybody at the lowest space, at the lowest barrier, and they can give them a roof over their head temporarily. They have navigation services, or they're trying to get people out of the situation that they're in, but they're not 24/7. They have cots, but they can only use them if in inclement weather. So there's no place for people to go. If they get somebody stabilized at Mint, unless there's a treatment bed for them or housing for them, they can't really navigate them anywhere. What this does, and they're not ready for Gospel Rescue Mission or U-Turn. So what this does is low barrier entry. They get time, 72 hours or more, to get stabilized, hot shower, sleep, clean clothes, meeting with case managers, et cetera, et cetera. But then they build that path to get out. It's all transitional. They build that path, and as long as they're working that path, that program, the goal is to get them out. This stabilization site will have intake and assessments right then and there, congregate living only for that transition, that stability time, and then they go right into transitional housing right on site. So no drugs, no alcohol. You can't be a danger to yourself or others. You have to be able to be good neighbors. You have to be able to work together. You have to be working with your local case managers, getting the wraparound services. Maybe they just need a job. Maybe they need to be able to save up, the first and last month's rent to be able to get a home, especially for a single parent working full time and 2 kids. They just can't manage it. Now there's a place where they're going to be able to sleep. They're going to be safe. They're going to have 24/7 security. They're going to have showers. They're going to have laundry. They're going to have restrooms. They're going to be able to meet with their case managers right there. So now the nonprofits don't have to go into the mountains or try and find them in an encampment or sleeping in their car anywhere. So it bridges that gap. So now as people stabilize, now you know what? They're probably ready for a Gospel Rescue Mission, or they're waiting for a bed to get into On Track or work with Adapt. They're stabilizing. Now they're ready to be able to do that. They're now ready to go and apply for that job because they have clean clothes and they're prepared. So it bridges the gap of what we don't have now, and it gives a stable place for the nonprofits to send their clients as well.
So what percentage do you think of the ones that are out there now who don't want to go to Gospel Rescue Mission because that's too much for them, of the people that are out there, what percentage do you think are going to go for that? Because there are still some barriers there. Right. There are still, limitations to their behavior, which I think is a lot of the problem, is that some of these people don't want limitations on their behavior. They may say that I don't want to go to Gospel Rescue Mission because of the religious element, or I can't have my dog, but in reality, it may well be just because they want to keep doing drugs and they don't want to be hindered by that. Yeah. You're not going to be able to do them. So of the people that are out there now, a large percentage of them are obviously not going to Gospel Rescue Mission because they got a lot of empty beds over there. Right. But how much do you think that you're going to get? Some people speculate that, on the Dr. Phil show that featured the Grants Pass situation that came out about a month ago, he suggested that recent surveys have said that 78% of the homeless are drug addicted. So that leaves you 22%. So of that 22%, how much do you think you're going to get out of this?
I'm glad you brought that up because that's exactly what Jeremy's wanting to focus on, is treatment first. Yeah. There's 2 things that just happened recently that's going to help motivate and incentivize people to get involved and to participate. One is because of Measure 110 changes. Now they have recriminalized the drugs. So arrests are being made. They can go to jail. They've implemented what's called a deflection program. So now if somebody gets arrested for a drug offense, probably any offense but a drug offense, they can either go to jail or they go through the deflection program, which is mandatory treatment. They would be a perfect candidate to say, I don't want to go to jail, I don't want to go to treatment, but I got to do this. And if they succeed, then that arrest is actually lifted from their record.
Oh,
so there's more incentive than we've had.
So the mandatory treatment is, if they choose that option, is enforced by law enforcement then?
I don't know all the intricacies of it, but yes, it's law enforcement is involved and the courts are involved. The Sobering Center is really the hub and the focal point to implement that. It would be really great to have them on the show sometime so people can understand. We didn't have that before. And we've had drug court, but there were no drug arrests. So what good was drug court? Now drug court, they can put people through the drug court, which includes treatment, which includes the other things so now there's more incentive for people to get involved. It's sad the numbers that we've heard over the last couple of years are 70 to 80% addiction, so we can't ignore that. And there's always going to be a small amount of people in any community that are they're there to cause problems, and they're not going to go along with anything. But now the number feels so large for law enforcement because of how many people are unhoused. Once we move people into housing or treatment or wherever they need to go, the numbers of those people are much more manageable.
Yeah, one would hope. From what I understand, somewhere in the neighborhood of 50% of all of the police calls here locally are dealing with this issue and its repercussions.
And not only that, it's 50% of their budget is going towards that. Because,
oh my gosh, yeah.
Because of all this. And that's why we kind of drifted away from the homeless housing first model. Is we recognize that the addiction is a big part of the homeless problem, and that's why we're going for the treatment first model. One of the kind of things we've also looked at is we spoke with Dr. Marvitt, who was Trump's homeless czar during his last term. And one of the things that he suggested is that we actually define and find out who's actually homegrown, who's actually from Grants Pass that is homeless. And there's ways to do that. And so what we want to do is we want to be able to focus the resources for those who here in Grants Pass. And what we want to do is those that aren't from Grants Pass, we want to be able to get them to where their support structure is, but also have a handoff at the other end where they can get services on the other end too. So we're not just doing what like LA is doing or Texas is doing and shipping them in. And I think
I'm sorry, what are they doing?
Busing them in. They're
busing them out is what you're saying, right?
Well, they're busing them out of LA, but they're busing them this way.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So and what we got the latest data that we've gotten on homelessness in our community is about 700 plus right now. And so we're looking to drastically reduce those numbers. And I think what's really good about everything going on right now is the time's right, the council's right, the movement's right, the community is fed up. But the community, being that the community is fed up, there's a lot of community response and a lot of community support right now. I just came out of the surveyor's office at the county right now. A couple of people came up and they talked to me and they said, well, we really like what you guys are doing. We want to back this. We want to support this. We want our community back. And I think a lot of people, that's what they want. They want their community back. But I think as a community, they got to realize, excuse me, I'm still getting over a cold, is, the communities are the ones that they voted for Measure 110 to go through. And so it's going to take all of us. It's going to take faith-based. It's going to take the NGOs, the non-government organizations. It's going to take the nonprofits. It's going to take the community. It's going to take all of us as a whole to solve this. And this is solvable. If they're solving it in other communities with a housing first model, then we can definitely solve it with the treatment first model.
Yeah, part of the issue that you mentioned that you're going to be helping with is the determining who's the homegrown people.
Right.
And I mean, if you can take half of the people that you're encountering and determine that they're from somewhere else and find them services in that location and move them to that location, that's half of that problem right there.
Yeah.
Right. If I can say it, because we're working closely with local nonprofits, we're getting to learn over the last couple of years what their funding sources are and what services they can provide we didn't know before. And a lot of even the organizations that were doing it weren't sure who's all doing what. So they're all trying to do it all. So we have one local organization that has funding this year for reunification. So what happens is we're talking to people and we're meeting with people and they're from here and it's chronic homelessness or a local veteran or a local senior citizen, somebody who came in was driving through from Texas and their car broke down and they're still here sleeping in their car. Other people who came here because we were the right place.
So when you say reunification, you mean reunifying them with family or a help
Exactly.
circle?
So the only, as we understand it, the only stipulation for a one-way bus ticket is that they have a place to go. Family, friends, a community, resources, services, VA, whatever that is. Because law enforcement has been doing this for years. We bust them out of town, they come back. And we bust them out of town, they come back. So the idea is get them there, whatever they need to get them there so that they can get the services they need in their own community. We're really excited about that because we haven't got to see a lot of that in a long time.
So is this being done under the umbrella of PATH or U-Turn for Christ, or?
So one of the things we started looking at is, although U-Turn for Christ, we're a faith-based ministry. We don't. One of the barriers for people to come in is the religious component. Another barrier is they're having their animals, their service dogs, or their, what are they called? Emotional support animals.
Right.
So we decided to file it for a new 501c3, and we decided to call it Pathways to Stability. That way, we're not going to mandate any type of faith-based, but we're all going to offer it, and then we're going to offer other options, for whether it's outpatient treatment or adapt
Secular,
options, secular treatment. Also, we want to be able to say that you have all the choices, options at your hands right now. That we don't want to give them an excuse that will say, well, this is not available to you, this is not available to you. No, everything's going to be made available to them.
And that way there's accountability because they have to have skin in the game. They really need to. One of the things that Jeromy realized early on, and we see it a lot, people might be ready to go to treatment and they won't because of their pet. Or they might be able to finally get into housing and they have to give up their pet to do it. So Jeromy started making phone calls about resources around the country that could help make this a pet-friendly place where whether somebody goes into treatment and then there's some kenneling, or they're actually in their unit with their pet. Obviously, they have to be safe for the community, just like everybody. But that's going to reduce a huge barrier for a lot of people.
Yeah, there's options for muzzles, harnesses, kenneling. SPCA and the Humane Society can come in to do vaccinations. They do it once a month at Parkway already for the homeless. So there's a lot of communities out there, or a lot of nonprofits out there, that have resources to help with people to bring their pets in. So, like I said, we don't want to leave them any excuse why they can't get themselves from being unhoused to being housed.
It's an accountability program, period.
Yeah.
It's not the handout, it's the hand up, but they need to do it themselves as well.
Yeah, that makes sense. So this is a new 501c3 operation then. So once you get that first taste of grant money, how are you going to not want another fix after a little bit,
Here's the thing is we've been in U-Turn's been around for about 30 years, and we've never once received any type of state funding or grant funding.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I mean, you're going to get your first hit there.
Taste of blood. Jeromy says this all the time. All they want to do is work themselves out of a job. Yeah, and we feel the same way as PATH. Literally.
I don't want to keep doing this. I want to be able to get back to doing what I do and I love to do, but I couldn't. The Bible tells me that if when evil prevails, when good men fail to act, especially within it in your power to do so. And we knew it was within our power because we've been doing this for so long, and we have the manpower and the ability to do it and experience to do that we wanted to help our community. And like Julie just said, I want to work myself out of a job. I want to work myself where this is, and it's been solved in other communities. So I just want to, 3 years down the road, say, well, we got to go back to work.
Exactly.
So, okay. So you're dealing with the 22%, or let's just be generous and say that it's 50% of the population of these people that you can help in some way. What do you do with the other 50%? I mean, I realize this is outside your sphere of influence here, but what are we going to do with the other 50%? Because there's still 50% there that are causing at least 25% of the police calls.
Yeah.
Right.
So I know one thing, for me personally, when I first got into doing counseling and being a counselor with the ministry, you pour your heart into a person, you pour a lot of time and energy, and then you would see them leave. And it was really just in the beginning, it was wreaking havoc with me. And Pastor Jerry, the founder of U-Turn for Christ, told me something that just made all the sense in the world to me. He says, don't focus on the ones that aren't making it. Focus on the ones that are going to make it. And so I think kind of looking at that level, I want to focus more on the 50% that I know are going to make it. And then those other 50%, well, they're in God's hands. Yeah. And I'm sure that, and I've seen it time and time again. We have a guy in our ministry right now who's one of our pastors, and he went through the ministry 14 times before and now he's a pastor. And at the 14th time, it clicked.
You mean he went through the program many times?
14 times.
Wow.
And after the 14th time, and now he's doing. It took 14 times, and it clicked. Yeah. And now he's doing great. He's got a family. He's got his own business. He's he runs the men's ministry.
He's giving back, paying it forward.
Yeah, and he's giving back. Now he's a productive member of the community. He's actually contributing to the community, having his own business and hiring people. Yeah. And so I kind of, Pastor Jerry, I bring up his name a lot because he taught me a lot of good things in the ministry. And he's always been, there's been times when I've looked at a person and said, nah, why are we even going to let him back? Forget it. And he's like, no, let him back. And sure enough, you let them back in, and it clicks, and they get it right. So, and I know for me, I didn't get it right the first time either. It took me a few tries.
I know there's no stopping them, as you can see. My experience is 20 years in law enforcement, and my whole job for 20 years was to work myself out of a job. And the bad guys kept me in business the whole time. And so I worked both locally and nationally and internationally. And we're always going to have to deal with that small percentage. What we want to do is we want to reduce that percentage to the point where it's actually manageable. When I was a police officer here, it was manageable. Later on, I came back, it was still manageable. The last 4 or 5 years, it has been unmanageable. So if the best thing we can do is get it manageable so that our public safety and our emergency services are constantly drained by this, huge. And you talked about the broken window theory in an earlier podcast that you did, and that's absolutely right. You do everything you possibly can to make your community safe and healthy and whole, and that automatically becomes a deterrent for other riffraff or other issues to come
Indeed.
in. We used to have huge problems in neighborhoods here, and I was a San Diego police officer, same problem. We'd have a whole neighborhood impacted by one drug house. And so we would constantly be making arrests out of the drug house over and over, and it wasn't making a difference. So it wasn't until we got to the root cause, we rooted that out, whether we had abated it or made the arrests and worked with the landlord to get good people in there. And then we did a whole community or whole neighborhood cleanup. So now there's pride in the community. People are watching out for each other. They're caring about each other. They open up a neighborhood watch, and they're meeting on a regular basis. The whole place gets cleaned up. I could tell you neighborhood after neighborhood of just even here locally what we did. And that's long-term sustainability. And guess what? That neighborhood is no longer a magnet for a drug house. That no longer is a magnet. Same with our parks. It's the weed and seed theory. If you know broken windows, you know the weed and seed. You can pull the weeds out all day long, but if you leave that soil unmanaged, the weeds are going to come back. So what you have to do, and it's in law enforcement and community and safety, is that you pull those weeds and you replant flowers, vegetation, grass, something like that. The weeds are going to have a lot harder time coming through. So we need to do that in our parks. We need to do that in our public spaces, fill them with families and special events and doing all the really great things. And those who are wanting to cause harm are not going to be as comfortable there.
Yeah, unfortunately, the element that's different from when you saw stability and now is you had a Supreme Court case that was in the middle of it, and the state put in HB 3115.
Terrible.
And that just hogtied us in the same circumstance that we were applying to the Supreme Court for relief from.
Absolutely.
And so, ultimately you're stuck in the same place. Right. And so I guess you have to do the best that you can under those circumstances. Now, do you have a site already for this?
We're looking at sites. I think we have 3 viable ones, but there's one that would be perfect, like right now. I think it's in negotiations. To possibly be able to utilize that site. And Jeromy can talk about what that site could supply as far as transitional housing units, maybe as many as 150 transitional housing.
So how big of a site are you looking for?
We're looking at 5+ acres because being that the scope is around 700 homeless, that's a lot.
Yeah.
And we can't do it all in one.
You can't do it you're not going to be able to do it on 6th or 7th Street.
Right, and you're not going to get 500 people in, or you're just not.
We're looking around 200, 250. The Greenville RV Park is in development right now. The developers and a person that's associated with that is looking to pivot that also into low income and transitional housing also. So
Permanent housing.
Transitional low income to permanent housing. We've kind of got this from the beginning into the end. We're just waiting for the property to go through. If it does go through, hopefully that gets done this week. I think we're having. So, I talked to Tamara with this Josephine County Fairgrounds. Okay. So 5 to 7 p.m. Monday, we're going to have a town hall meeting. That way, we're going to invite the public out, let them know what's going on, because there's a lot of
this coming Monday.
This coming
Correct.
Monday.
The
21st.
21st.
Yeah, kind of let the public know what's going on. That way they can have a voice. I think one of the things I was talking about with some of the community members today at the courthouse is I want to be able to have people that are in the community to be on some of these committees that we're going to have with Pathways. That way they have their input. They can help out. That they can actually take pride in what's going on. Because like I said, it's going to take the whole community to do this.
So where's the money come from for that?
For the property?
Yeah, you can't get the location without somebody whipping out some money for that.
Yeah. So right now we're looking at it's probably going to be private funded. If it's a lease, I think we might be leasing a piece of property from the city and do a lease, probably a 10-15 year lease, maybe with a sunset clause, maybe a lease option to buy. We're looking at all avenues right now. All I know is the problem keeps getting worse and worse. The community is getting more and more unsettled with it. And that right now is the time to act on this because we've got everybody mobilized. We've got a whole lot of support. We've got a path. Basically, we got a pathway. we've got a plan. And I know not all plans are foolproof, and we're going to have to fix things as we go. But I think we've got a pretty good working model to work with and move forward with. And I want to see the community thrive again. I want to see people walking downtown again. I want to see people back in our parks. I want to see this. It's the climate.
Yeah.
I want to see people just have it. Grant's Path life again.
So, but this is going to require sustaining money coming in. Where does that money come from?
Hopefully, here's the thing: is that we're looking, like I said, there's some allocated grant money already out there that's for homelessness and sheltering and everything like that. We'll probably tap into that a little bit. There's a lot of private funding and grants available out there. I think one of the things we're going to
now, when you say private funding and grants, are you talking about corporate?
There's foundations. There's foundations like the Home Depot Foundation, the Reiser Family Foundation. There's the Meyer Foundation. I spoke with the Reiser Family Foundation today. They're very interested in helping with their next gen grant.
One of our tribal communities also has some really great opportunities.
Yeah, and that's what we're going to one of the things we want to talk about at the town hall is if there's any members in the community that want to help something like this and have the ability to, that we want to make that available to them. I'm not. I believe I'm a firm believer in faith, and I believe that God owns 1,000 hills with 1,000 cattle. And that if God guides, God provides, because I've seen him do that in our ministry for over 30 years now. Like I said, we never received private funding or state funding, and we've always had our bills paid. We've always been able to do what we'd be able to do. And so I know some people might not seem practical to have faith in it, but I do have faith. I have a lot of faith that the funding's just going to come because this is the right thing to do.
What else do we have right now? Really,
yeah.
I think people are searching for any possible option. I know that when the new council came in and they shut down the J Street camp, I thought, thank God. But then we immediately got hit with this lawsuit situation, and there's a lot of circumstances in there you may or may not want to comment on that. I think some of these nonprofits are funding the lawsuits or facilitating finding the people to put the lawsuit together so that they can have a situation here that is permanent for nonprofit
We feel really
situations.
good about the local nonprofits that we've worked with over the last 2 years because none of them are involved in that, and we now have become a magnet for that. So I think we're always going to be.
Well,
Yeah, I think a lot
wasn't people who were working for Mint involved in the Disability Rights Oregon situation?
Only prior to leaving Mint. So in other words, Mint had absolutely nothing to do with that.
Yeah.
In fact, it really splashed up on Mint's pants because they had nothing to do with that. And what it did is it tied their hands much more as well.
Well, what is the motivation of, say, Disability Rights Oregon, who, by the way, a really great resource for anybody who wants to check out funding. It's a website called Data Republican, and you can go and enter the employee ID number of any company, any nonprofit, and it'll trace the funding all the way back to the source.
Wow.
And Disability Rights Oregon goes all the way back to the source, if you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Wow.
So
the cool thing and the bad thing about the injunction and the cool thing about that's why we think the timing is so important. Not only do we believe it's going to be successful, but it nullifies all the complaints in the lawsuit because now we're focusing on 4 areas. We're trying to keep it local, but we're focusing on senior citizens, those with disabilities, single parents with children, and veterans. Those are our primary focus. If we're going to take the low-hanging fruit, that's where we want to put all the energy. When we do that, particularly with those with disabilities and seniors and veterans, they no longer have they don't no longer have to move, right? They're going through a program and they're getting better and they can go into permanent housing, but they no longer have to move. They no longer are in an unsafe situation. They no longer are living in squalor. They now have absolute 100% access 24/7 to the services that they need. I don't know all the points of the lawsuit, but so basically it makes it null and void. Hopefully, God willing, we will see some movement in that once this becomes implemented, because what's the argument now, right? What's the argument? So that's not our number one motivation, but it is certainly a benefit to our local area to be doing this right now.
Yeah, and I think I'd like to speak back to the Mint thing. One thing that I know that Mint has done really well in the last few weeks, the last couple of months, is they got, like Julie said, they got a lot of blowback on them from people that used to be associated with their organization that actually are tied into these lawsuits. Dr. Scott Nelson, who's doing a phenomenal job, who's took over the board of Mint along with Cassie, and trying to put themselves as far away from that as possible, because a lot of people associate Mint with a lawsuit, and unfortunately, it was one bad apple that was actually associated with Mint, not associated with Mint anymore.
yeah, and then former city council and mayor, unfortunately.
It's one of the things we are trying not to do. We're not trying to get caught up in this political landscape with it. We're just trying to help the community, and like I said, work ourselves out of a job. It's sad. It's really sad that people kind of have their own agendas and they're using what's really it's sad. It's actually tragic. If you actually went out to those encampments and stuff and look, no American should ever live like that. And to kind of hide behind something like that and use that for personal gain. Well, shame on you.
Yeah, Tucker Carlson spoke to this in an interview there with Joe Rogan here not all that long ago, and they were talking about the homelessness industrial complex, and Tucker was saying, how bad is it that you are making money off of the homeless people?
Right.
You're facilitating continued drug use, and those people, many of them are dying.
Right.
And you don't care, you're taking the money.
Right.
This is my problem with nonprofits. That's what rubs me the wrong way with the whole nonprofit thing. And so, when you guys say you're starting up another nonprofit, I go, oh, okay, all right.
I get it.
Not for the same reason.
Before.
Not for the same
I totally
reason.
get it. Yeah, I totally get it. But my heart, and I know the heart behind it, because we're men of faith. that got into this, and we know that we're accountable for what we do. We answer to we have a higher calling. I know in the end that I got to hear, hey, what did you do with the homeless situation that I put before you? And I want to hear, well done, good and faithful servant.
That's right.
I don't want to hear, hey, you exploited them, you manipulated them, you use it for your own personal gain. I'm not interested in any of that. I just seen a need in the community. We've seen a need in the community. And that's to be a part of community. We're all members of this community, and we can't just turn a blind eye to it. We got to do something about it. And it's I know as long as I'm involved in this, there's not going to be any of that monkey business going on. I won't stand for it. I'll walk away from it if it ever turns into something like that.
We all will. I've been in the community since the 70s. I went to school here, and my little brothers and sisters grew up here. And then I came back and raised my kids here, and now our kids are back raising their kids here, and we're here to retire. So we're going to fight to the end, hopefully not to the death, but fight to the end to get our community back. We were here when we had biker bars all along G Street. We were here when the Wonder Blur was the Wonder Blur, and you don't dare go in there as a police officer. You weren't going to come out of there without a scuffle.
Wow.
And when we could actually play in parks and have our kids, back at hacky sack days, and there was kids smoking weed or whatever, but it was manageable, and people felt safe in our community. And just because it's 2025 doesn't mean that, it's a nationwide problem. There's nothing you can do about it. I'm not buying that for one bit.
Me either.
If we lay down and bury our heads in the sand, and like he says, evil will thrive when good men do absolutely nothing. We are not going to go down doing nothing. But it's not going to help us to build up this and manage this problem, because we're going to lose more businesses, we're going to lose more residents, we're going to lose more tourism, we are going to continue to be in national news instead of the good legacy.
These camps that they have on the main drags of this town are just that just doesn't work. If I came here looking for a house to buy, and I saw that, I would go, well, this is a beautiful place, but that's a deal breaker.
Absolutely.
Well, and that's,
Absolutely right.
speaking of sustainability, we were just talking about it a little while ago. My kind of vision for this is that 50%, let's say it's 30%, actually transition into another workforce. That we have actually people contributing to the community, working in the community, and helping building our community out. And to me, that would be huge. That we can take them from being homelessness to actually where they're productive members are contributing, maybe even business owners along down the line, and that's all possible. We've seen, like I just said, one of the pastors, Pastor Jacob Stedman, who went through the program 14 times, now owns his own business. He pays city taxes, that's contributing back to the community. And so my hope is that we'll see that with this, that, we'll get these people that got their lives right, got back in the community, started contributing.
Exactly.
And we have another workforce now. And we're really invested in this with the community right now. One of the things we just did this weekend is we went downtown with the Park Watch, and we did a whole downtown cleanup. And we're going to continue to do that because we want the community to know that we're all in on this, that we're not part of that whole homeless industrial complex, that we have been here, part of this community for 17 years now, and that we want to continue to be a part of this beautiful community. And we want grants. One of the speeches I gave was called "Make Grants Pass Great Again," and I totally believe that we can make it great again. I think that once we do this, I think all those naysayers and all the other towns and communities that have looked at us with kind of a raised eyebrow for what's going on here will come and take a look at us and say, might have taken a while to get going, but they got it right. And so that's kind of where I'm at, and a lot of us are at with this, is we want to see this solved. We don't want to keep managing it. Like in essence, I'll keep saying it. We're going to work ourselves out of a job, and the quicker that we can work ourselves out of a job, the better.
One of the major, we have several activities. We're trying to hit homelessness from all sides, because whether it's addiction or mental illness or housing or domestic violence or job placement, whatever the case is, we're trying to hit it from all sides. And so one of the big issues is if we don't have a workforce, right, who's going to fill those jobs? We don't have affordable housing. So we actually have a housing subcommittee, and we've merged our housing subcommittee with Pathway to Stability Housing Committee to talk about workforce housing, affordable housing, transitional housing. What is it we can do? Because we've got to build up our workforce. And I ran a business until 2 years ago. When we sold, I had 75 employees. At any given time, I could have had 7 to 8 that were couch surfing or sleeping in their car, because remember when the rents went from $800 to $1,200 overnight, I had several. And most of mine were former law enforcement or first responders or veterans, and I still couldn't house them. So, and we're trying to hit it from all sides.
That's part of a bigger issue.
Yeah.
You know?
But we can still hit housing at the same time as we're hitting addiction, that we're hitting mental illness, that we're hitting the other areas that are so critical. That's the only way to do it. It's a multifaceted problem that requires multifaceted solutions.
And along with that too, we're looking at preventative steps also. What's causing people to fall into homelessness? We want to be able to address that too. Like Julie said, we want to combat this from all angles, from the
right.
lack of affordable
I mean,
housing.
if people see it coming and know that there's a place to go to, help cushion the hit, it'll definitely help.
Absolutely.
And I think that's going to be one of the biggest things with case management is even helping people finance their regulate their finances better and be able to have some little financial or job skills and stuff like that. And I think that's one of the things that cause people to go into homelessness. They're not good with their finances, and I think be able to provide them with people that can help them, teach them how to manage their finances better is going to be one of the key things. Also, we're looking to do CTE with this, career, technical, and education training with the workforce development and the job placement. And like Julie said, we got to attack this from all angles. It's an education problem. It's a lack of affordable housing problem. It's a mental health issue. It's a medical issue. It's there's a lot of components that actually go into this that have caused this to be what it is. But like Julie and I always say, how do you eat an elephant? You do it one bite at a time. And I think we're up to the thigh bone right now.
Yeah. And we're gaining weight instead of losing weight.
All right. Well, anything else you guys, any points you want to hit before we go on?
I would just love for our community to, especially those who are feeling helpless, those who are on the verge of leaving because of this, the businesses who are on the verge of leaving. In part of our recent company is we took care of people's businesses and their homes. So when we had a mass exodus of clients, that's a problem because they left the area because they didn't feel safe, or one of these areas were impacted them. And so I want to say, if you're frustrated, if you don't know what to do, you want to stay in the community, you're ready to stand up and do something, come to PATH and just go right on our pathofjoco.org. Pathofjoco.org. We have regular meetings. You can come hear the great work, how you can help. There's nonprofits, and I'm with you. I worked with some that were nothing but problem, but we've got some amazing ones that are helping parents break the cycle of generational poverty, generational violence, this is how we always lived, and they're raising their kids the same way. They're breaking those cycles, and they're building up this community, and they might need a volunteer to help, an 18-year-old single mom figure out how to fill out an application or fill backpacks or help in areas that you would want to do, you just don't know where or how. Come to PATH, because we provide the volunteers, we provide donations, we provide whatever resources we have, and the more people we have to do that, the better, so that those who are doing great work can succeed and they don't have to feel helpless anymore. I felt so helpless. How ridiculous is that? I mean, I feel like I was pretty much an excellent problem solver, and I didn't feel safe in our own parks. I couldn't even take my grandkids to the splash park unless I was armed. Shouldn't have to be like that. So do come to PATH, learn more about what we're doing. It's a very diverse group that's nonpartisan, so you can come in, and we don't talk politics at all. We say, who's doing what? How can we help? What direction do we need to go to make the greatest impact on this issue? There's no excuse for sitting in your chair and going, I hate this, now I have to move. Where am I going to even move? Don't need to do that now. Don't need to do that.
Yeah, and I would say that I'm kind of a black and white guy when it comes to a lot of things. And if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. And so I would invite the community to come out to the town hall meeting. I invite the community to get involved any way they can if they feel that too. Because we hear that a lot. There are a lot of people, they want to help, but they don't know how to get involved. Well, come to the town hall meeting, and we'll find out a way to get you involved, get you to help. I think a good message for the community is just hold on. That things are going to get better. I always believe that it's, you hear the cliches, it's darkest before the dawn, and faith is the bird that fills the light when the dawn's still dark. I believe the better things are still to come. I think that the election that just took place, and Trump talks about the golden age of America, and I believe we are stepping into that. And I also believe that we're stepping into a revival in our country also. The pendulum can only go so far, and I think the pendulum's shifting back the other way. And I think if we just hold on, I think we're coming out of the storm right now. And I think if we just, okay, we're all wet and drenched, but just hold on, we're going to dry off. And the seas are going to come.
I believe you're right about that too. Yeah. I think that's it's. The future's bright.
I think so. Yeah. And I think that we all have a bright future together. I think that we're going to look back 5, maybe 10 years from now, and we're going to be very, very proud of our community, very proud of what we were able to accomplish here. And I think what we're getting ready to do here is going to be able to transfer out of just Grants Pass, that it's going to go throughout the state and be able to be a model that's used throughout the rest of the country.
Well, this will be out in the next couple of days, and so hopefully this boosts your turnout there, your event.
Yeah. Thank you.
And so again, when is this event and where?
Okay, so it's going to be at the Josephine County Fairgrounds. I think it's going to be at the same building. Once I got off this, I'm going to get on the phone with Tamara. 5 to 7 p.m. on the 21st.
So it's not the first building on the right, it's the second building on the right, and there's plenty of parking, ADA, seniors, whatever. You'll be able to get home before dark at 5 to 7 on Monday the 21st.
I think some of the city council members will be there. I think the mayor is going to be there. The only thing that would stop that from happening is scheduling. But I think Holly Morton from the Republican Party is going to be there also.
And get the word out.
Yeah.
The cool thing is this has been really hard because our nation has been so divided and our community has been divided in a way I've never experienced before. And it was horrible. We couldn't even have a civil conversation. We are finally mobilized as a community, and we still have the fray. We're always going to have the fray in every community, but this is the most mobilized, the most aligned we've been in a really long time, and this gives me hope that as long as we do it now and we strike now while we're mobilized, that we can have a very different conversation a year down the road and say, okay, we did that, now what? Now what are we going to do? Right?
I hope you're right about that. Hey, listen, I appreciate you guys stopping in and talking to me about this. I'm sure that the residents of this town are waiting on the edge of their seat for any possibility of, a break.
Yeah. Agreed. Us too.
And I think it's going to be, what I really like is that pretty soon this is going to be the whole topic. That this is going to be, what we'll talk about later, but that there's other municipalities and other conversations that are going to be taking place in the city and the city council, and they're going to be able to go on, into building development and downtown development and other things like this. This has taken up so much of the time. It's taken up so much of the community.
Absolutely.
The mentality of it's a big stress on the community. And like I said, I just want to say one more time to the community, just hold on. Good things are coming.
Yeah.
Good things are coming.
And stand beside us, and we'll keep you working. We'll keep you busy till we're done.
Yeah.
All right. Well, wish you guys a lot.
Thank you.
For
Thank
sure.
you for having us on.
Thank you for the time, Mike.